Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 based on novel. So let's start. What's this? Long Xiaoyao was still standing there, motionless, and he grinned as he allowed those two beams of light to land on his body. There weren't any soul power undulations, nor were there spiritual undulations. The black and white beams didn't seem to do anything at all. However, Long Xiaoyao's expression changed a little when they actually landed on him, and an inexplicable sense of danger immediately appeared in his mind. I can feel danger. Spiritual shock. A voice with a strange tone rang out, and every syllable uttered made the enormous vertical eye a little brighter. One could see that all the rose gold light that the vertical eye was radiating had turned blood red in this moment. A pillar of light that was the same size as the vertical eye blasted out in the next moment and went right for Long Xiaoyao. Long Xiaoyao snorted as his body, which was originally submerged within all the rose gold colors, suddenly turned black as a dragon roar that seemed to come from ancient ages could be heard. An enormous black dragon head appeared in front of him as it howled deeply at all the rose gold light around him. Spiritual power against spiritual power, this was the arrogance that belonged to an ultimate Doluo. Even though Long Xiaoyao wasn't a spiritual type soul master, his mastery of spiritual power had already reached the limits of terrifying, because he was an ultimate Doluo. However, something that astonished the Dragon Emperor Doluo once more happened. The rose gold pillar of light, that seemed unstoppable, as it zipped through the air suddenly paused. Yes, it paused and a shadow suddenly appeared in front of it. It was Hui Yuhao, who was back in human form. A rose gold wheel of light glowed behind his head. There were patterns of a three-eyed golden lion within this wheel. Hui Yuhao's body slammed almost directly into the giant black dragon head, and he was immediately consumed by the darkness. Everything happened too suddenly, and Long Xiaoyao was momentarily stunned. Afterwards, he looked on in surprise as the black dragon head that he had conjured with his spiritual power dissipated just like that. The figure was still hovering in mid-air, and the rose gold pillar that was reactivated enveloped that shadow before it wrapped around him and slammed brutally into Long Xiaoyao's body. The rose gold pillar's origin, the vertical eye, disappeared in that moment, and a large black door filled with eerie and sinister auras took its place. Hui Yuhao's face was very pale as he stood at the gate's entrance. He was holding Tang Wutong with one of his hands, and her radiant dragon butterfly's wings were outstretched. Let's go. Hui Yuhao dashed into the door as he pulled Tang Wutong along. There would only be one outcome battling an ultimate Doluo, and that was death and defeat. Therefore, Hui Yuhao had never considered fighting against the Dragon Emperor Doluo from the beginning. What he needed was an opportunity. Destiny's judgment from the Eye of the Azura was the first step to creating this chance. Bad luck appearing on his opponent was equivalent to good luck standing on his side. Black and white lights crossed. Those were the three-eyed golden lion's two powerful soul skills conferred by his sixth soul ring, spiritual dispossession, and destiny's demise. They instantly lowered his opponent's defense against both material and spiritual attacks. Even Hui Yuhao didn't know what kind of effect these two powerful soul skills could achieve against an ultimate Doluo. What came next was his most powerful spiritual attack, the Eye of the Azura's spiritual shock. The rose gold colors almost became blood red when he was using his full strength. Hui Yuhao could only get closer to an ultimate Doluo with spiritual attacks. He had actually paid an enormous price for that momentary pause in the middle, and cracks even appeared in his spiritual sea in that moment because of it. But it was that momentary pause that allowed him to dispel the Eye of the Azura, and use instant teleportation to appear in front of his own spiritual shock. What he leveraged was the Dragon Emperor Doluo's arrogance, and he was betting that the Dragon Emperor Doluo would use spiritual power to fight against his own spiritual shock. He was successful in his wager. He used his body to take a hit from the Dragon Emperor Doluor's attack, and he used his soul skill that came from the three-eyed golden lion's skull, Destiny's adjudication. That soul skill allowed him to become immune to spiritual attacks thrice a day. Hui Yuhao managed to escape from the Evil Eye Tyrant King's assault back then, because of this soul skill. His chances were boosted once more. The Black Door appeared, because Hui Yuhao was already making his incantations, when he became the Eye of the Azura. He relied on his spiritual soul core to do two things at the same time, and his body sustained an enormous burden, as he completed the summoning of his spectral demiplane. What Hui Yuhao needed was the last step in creating this opportunity. He made another bet, that his strongest form of spiritual shock could cause the Dragon Emperor Doluor to be momentarily stunned, after taking a hit from spiritual dispossession. If every chance came through in the end, then he had a chance to take Tang Wutong into the spectral demiplane and escape from this place. The Eye of the Azura, Destiny's judgment, spiritual dispossession, Destiny's demise, spiritual shock, instant teleportation, Destiny's adjudication, and the opening of his spectral demiplane. Hui Yuhao used 8 soul skills one after another within such a short period of time, and he did all that so he could create a chance for him and Tang Wutong to run away. Did he succeed? Darkness was starting to descend upon them as Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's bodies were about to disappear into that large door which connected them to the spectral demiplane. Everything in this world seemed to freeze amid the darkness. An elderly voice suddenly resonated through the air, which was already frozen and swallowed by darkness. Almost. You really almost succeeded. A gigantic black dragon claw flickered with dark purple light as it slashed out across this dark space, right at the black door that Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong had just escaped into. The large black door immediately broke apart, as two bodies that were about to disappear suddenly became clear once more. They were forcibly pulled from the darkness surrounding them. The silent darkness vanished as Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong collapsed onto the ground almost at the same time. Tang Wutong's eyes were full of fear as she helped Hui Yuhao back on his feet, who was faltering and about to fall back to the ground. Her expression became increasingly solemn. The darkness holy dragon, the Dragon Emperor Doluor, reappeared within their vision amid the darkness, but he was no longer smiling. His eyes were concentrated on Hui Yuhao's body, and there were unexplainable emotions rippling through his eyes. Now, I must admit that you are much more talented and accomplished than I was when I was younger, Long Xiaoyao spoke sincerely. With your current spiritual power, and the fact that you already possess a soul core for your spiritual type martial soul before your 8th soul ring, you will have a chance to challenge me when you become a transcendent Doluor in the future. If, one day, you can become an ultimate Doluor, then you will be on the same level as the Beast God and the Evil Emperor. If not for my silent darkness domain, you would have successfully escaped, and this episode would have probably become the greatest joke of my later days. Hui Yuhao struggled from Tang Wutong's support. He wiped away the blood that was coming from his nose as he said coldly, "We weren't able to escape in the end, were we?" His nose was bleeding not because the darkness holy dragon had hurt him. Instead, that was because he had paid a huge price to unleash 8 powerful soul skills with his full strength one after another. Every single soul skill was unleashed at its greatest possible level, and even his spiritual sea began to crack. His head was exploding with pain, and it was impossible for him to use spiritual attacks like he did before. But we haven't lost. We will never lose in any moment before we die. Tang Wutong took a step forward from behind Hui Yuhao and stood in front of him. Hui Yuhao was momentarily stunned. Tang Wutong snapped her head around and glanced at him. Why aren't you willing to trust me? If we had combined our abilities back then, we might have succeeded. You have too much machismo. Hui Yuhao felt a little dazed in that instant as he saw her displeased expression. A thought suddenly surfaced in his mind. If only she had been Donga. If I had teamed up with Donga, our plan would have succeeded. Now, it's my turn. Tang Wutong grunted coldly, as she raced forward like a gust of wind. She was pretty, and she was aloof, and she seemed like the goddess of light that lit up the darkness around them in this moment. She had the determination of a moth pouncing towards fire, and an unwavering resolution. Her pinkish-blue hair swayed in the air like waves, as she continued charging forward. Crisp dragon roars could be heard as brilliant golden flames blazed behind her. A smile appeared on Long Xiaoyao's face once more, as he stared at the determination and arrogance on Tang Wutong's face. He gradually raised his right hand. Right in this moment, Tang Wutong's body suddenly paused in mid-air, as all 7 of her soul rings shone. Her soul rings were also different from normal soul masters. Black, 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 red. She had 6 black rings and 1 red ring, 6 10,000-year soul rings, and a single 100,000-year soul ring. This meant she had potential and talent that wasn't inferior to Hu Yuhao at all. One reason why Bei Bei went to look for Tang Wutong and asked her to ask Hu Yuhao to return, besides the fact that she looked just like Donga, was because Bei Bei hoped that she could let Hu Yuhao slowly walk out from his thoughts and memories of Donga. But there was yet another more important reason, and that was because she was sufficiently powerful. She had 7 powerful soul rings that made her much more powerful than a typical soul sage. Her 7 soul rings flickered as the radiance from her body flourished. The light pattern of a trident appeared on her forehead, and a tinge of blue immediately covered her otherwise golden frame. Tang Wutong raised her head a little amid the bluish-gold colors. She allowed her flowing long hair to drift and sway in the wind, and a bright dragon roar rang out from her mouth. This dragon roar was crisp and bright, and along with the intense bluish-golden light, an enormous dragon-shaped shadow gradually appeared with her body in the middle. That was a colossal dragon, which was flickering with the colors of the rainbow. The dragon seemed very illusory, but there was a dignity and majesty within the illusion that seemed like it could dominate the ages. When it first appeared, the Dragon Emperor Doluo felt it the most acutely. If Hu Yuhao's spiritual power had left him astonished earlier, he was horrified to see the 7-colored dragon projection that shone from Tang Wutong's body. If it was just the color or aura of this projection, the Dragon Emperor Doluo wouldn't have felt it so strongly. More importantly, it was the dominance of the projection that made him felt so overwhelmed. It was a dominance that originated from her lineage. Dragon God. Long Xiaoyao shouted, and subconsciously staggered back. In the past, he and Mu Yan were called the twin holy dragons of black and white. Mu Yan's title was the Dragon God, while he was the Dragon Emperor. However, such titles were only complements to their immense abilities. Their martial souls were the Radiant Holy Dragon and Darkness Holy Dragon respectively, which were both branches of the dragon species. The reason why they were so strong was because they were one of the authentic dragons. The Radiant Holy Dragon and Darkness Holy Dragon were both very respected, and were considered one of the more superior dragons. Long Xiaoyao's martial soul was in fact of the same lineage as Di Qian. However, the difference between his martial soul and Di Qian's was that Di Qian was the clan master of the Black Dragons, since he was the golden-eyed Black Dragon King. If the Darkness Holy Dragon actually existed, it would at most be regarded as an honorary elder of the Black Dragons. The aura that Tang Wutong exuded from her body right now clearly belonged to that of dragons. However, it was much superior to the aura of the Radiant and Darkness Holy Dragons. Furthermore, that terrifying dominance from her aura only belonged to the original Dragon God. Even though the aura that came from Tang Wutong's body was slightly weaker, it was still different from that of the Darkness Holy Dragon. Her abilities weren't enough to threaten Long Xiaoyao, but her streak of dragon aura completely suppressed Long Xiaoyao and his Darkness Holy Dragon, causing him to become fearful. Tang Wutong used the 4th soul skill of her Radiant Butterfly Goddess, dragon god's possession. The seven-colored dragon projection turned into a layer of thin seven-colored dragon scales on Tang Wutong's body. Her dragon scales extended all the way until her lower jaw. Only her head wasn't covered. After she was engulfed by a thin layer of dragon scales, her aura became more and more dominant. Behind her, a pair of wings that were also dyed in the same seven colors rose up. Her second soul ring also started to shine, causing a seven-colored glow to burn brightly. It was her second soul skill, Dragon God's Fury. A high-pitched dragon roar reverberated through the air, forming a huge seven-colored light blade that chopped towards Long Xiaoyao's head. It was Tang Wutong's third soul skill, Radiant Dragon God Slash. At this moment, even Long Xiaoyao couldn't confirm what Tang Wutong's martial soul was. However, there was one thing he was clear about: the blood lineage and aura of the dragon god were present in her martial soul. Earlier, he had thought that Hu Yuhao was the most special, far surpassing any generational talent. But right now, he immediately sensed that Tang Wutong was on the same tier as him when she unleashed her full strength. Even though he had been alive for more than 200 years, he had never even heard of an inherited martial soul of the dragon god before. He lifted his right hand and gently smacked it. The night sky behind him instantly turned pitch black. The radiant dragon god's slash was slowly dissipated by that darkness. However, Long Xiaoyao's body actually shone with streaks of seven-colored light. Although they soon vanished, Tang Wutong's attack was still able to hit him. This showed the effect of the dragon god's blood lineage in her attack. Tang Wutong's attacks didn't cease just like that. She continued to charge forward, but her body transformed. The seven-colored dragon projection appeared once again. However, it was no longer illusory this time. It was well and truly real. It was a small and delicate seven-colored dragon. A pair of butterfly-shaped dragon wings opened behind her back. Seven-colored scales reflected bright lights. This small seven-colored dragon was only 7 meters long. It was very small and weak compared to a real dragon. Even most of the mature earth dragons were bigger than it. However, as it appeared, Long Xiaoyao took another step back. By unleashing the dragon's god possession through her radiant butterfly goddess, it would naturally evolve into the dragon god's descent. Of course it wasn't the true dragon god, but that streak of strength from the dragon god's lineage was still unleashed to its greatest potential. The reason why Long Xiaoyao stepped back was because her dragon god's aura had become stronger. If it were Yi Shishure, things might even still be better. But Long Xiaoyao's darkness holy dragon naturally developed some fear in front of the dragon god's aura. It was not something that could be made up for using his cultivation. Tang Wutong's wings slashed down instantly. It was her dragon wings guillotine. Long Xiaoyao lifted his right hand. Tang Wutong felt as if she had hit some kind of viscous fluid, which hindered her. It even felt as if she was stuck to something. Roar! Another sonorous dragon roar sounded. The seven-colored dragon roared furiously at Long Xiaoyao, and Tang Wutong's fifth soul ring shone brightly. It was her fifth soul skill, Dragon God's Roar. A huge seven-colored dragon head appeared behind Tang Wutong. Following this roar, an intense seven-colored glow, which was around as large as Tang Wutong, was released in Long Xiaoyao's direction. The black current around Long Xiaoyao's body was greatly dissipated by this seven-colored glow. Tang Wutong unleashed her full strength, but why would Long Xiaoyao let her achieve what she wanted? He snorted coldly before the viscous black moved up to the seven-colored dragon wings. The incredible difference in their cultivations couldn't be made up for just from the strength of Tang Wutong's lineage. Tang Wutong only felt a wave of invisible, dark aura suppressing her spiritual power. This leapt her dragon god's aura from spreading any further. At this moment, the surrounding temperature suddenly fell significantly. A snow-white figure appeared beside Tang Wutong and pressed her palm towards Long Xiaoyao's head. The temperature didn't actually fall. The chill came from within. Yes, it came from within Long Xiaoyao's body. What? Long Xiaoyao was stunned. He immediately flipped his left palm to receive the incoming palm. Empress sword, Empress palm, Empress chill. It was the Snow Empress and the snowless glacier. Grr, the Snow Empress snorted gently, and her snow-white figure became illusory. A jade-green figure replaced her, and a sinister white light swept past. Long Xiaoyao pointed with his finger, and a ring rang out. The jade-green figure instantly turned illusory, before it backed off. Long Xiaoyao's left arm was quickly frozen from the consecutive strikes. A layer of frost engulfed his entire arm. His arm turned completely numb. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't instantly neutralize it. Destiny's demise had taken effect, and his material defense had been lowered. Otherwise, how could Long Xiaoyao be frozen, given that the Snow Empress and Ice Empress weren't in their original form? It was at this moment that a figure that exuded strong rose-gold light appeared. A palm also appeared with this figure. Weird emotional undulations spread in the air. Sorrow, yearning, love, pain and all kinds of other emotions gathered in this palm. It was the Haodong palm, a palm which lasted eternally. Long Xiaoyao's right palm was controlling Tang Wutong, and his left palm was frozen. However, at this moment, he seemed very calm. He wasn't as stunned as before. He retracted his right palm, and blocked Hu Yuhao's palm. When their palms collided, Hu Yuhao was flung back. Long Xiaoyao's body also jerked slightly, and he revealed a confused look in his eyes. At this instant, he seemed to have returned to 200 years ago, when he was first making a name with Mu Yan and met Yi Shishui. White and jade green combined. Two hands were holding onto each other. The light projection reformed. It was as if they had instantly arrived in another world. Everything around them instantly turned into a land of ice and snow. The Ice Empress and Snow Empress disappeared. A rebuke that seemed to come from the ice plains of the extreme north descended from the sky. Two giant beams of white and jade-green light instantly descended. The boundless darkness was crushed by that miraculous white and green, turning into powder. Long Xiaoyao's body shook. In the next moment, he had already turned into an ice statue. Tang Wutong struggled and managed to break free from her restraints. She flew back into the air. Bang! The ice statue exploded, scattering ice everywhere. It was the ice explosion technique. The ice formed from ultimate ice was immediately blown apart, as the pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses was unleashed. Hu Yuhao crashed to the ground and grabbed his left hand. Is it over? It wasn't just his spirit eyes that could unleash the strength of a titled Doluo. When he used his full strength, he could do it with his ultimate ice martial soul too. After the Snow Empress recovered, the pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses had already regained its full strength. The fusion of the Ice and Snow Empresses caused the temperature of ultimate ice to fall below -240 degrees Celsius. This terrifyingly low temperature instantly drained Hu Yuhao's soul power. However, he still managed to complete this strike, because both the Ice and Snow Empresses had absorbed the manifold mysterious ice essence, giving him a stable foundation. This could already compare to the all-out attack of a titled Doluo. The Dragon Emperor Doluo was complacent. Along with Destiny's demise and spiritual dispossession, as well as the judgment of destiny, he was struck with the greatest misfortune. The Dragon Emperor Doluo disappeared. It was as if he had died from the ice explosion technique. Tang Wutong had already retreated to Hu Yuhao's side, and pulled him up. The two of them looked at each other, revealing puzzled looks in their eyes. Win? Did we win? The answer was no. Darkness, boundless, irresistible and terrifying darkness descended once again. Everything seemed to have stopped. Time, movement and Huiyuhao and Tang Wutong's blood and soul power slowed. At this moment, the two of them became statues. They stood there quietly, and only saw the dejected look in each other's eyes. Long Xiaoyao slowly walked out from the darkness, just like he did when he first walked out from the Heavenly Soul Empire's imperial palace. His white hair looked a little messy now. His clothes were also a little messy. However, this was the worst it got for him. How could an ultimate Doluo be killed so easily? The two of you have indeed given me a lot of surprises. I didn't expect young people to be so good nowadays. The new generation of youngsters has surpassed the older generations. Long Xiaoyao didn't feel down, just because he was in a slightly pathetic state right now. On the contrary, he seemed to be very happy. He gestured towards Huiyuhao and Tang Wutong. Huiyuhao didn't move, but Tang Wutong directly flew towards and landed in front of him. From the start until the end, Tang Wutong wasn't able to move no matter how much she tried to circulate her soul power. She could only watch as she was sucked over by Long Xiaoyao. What a beautiful young lady. If I were 200 years younger, I might even chase you. Long Xiaoyao's expression turned cold. The game is over. The darkness was removed, and Long Xiaoyao's hand was on Tang Wutong's shoulder. It was just a frail and elderly hand, but Tang Wutong felt as if everything in her body had been sealed. She couldn't even muster her strength, and only stood there just like that. Huiyuhao fell to the ground. All the fighting earlier had completely drained him. Long Xiaoyao said, Huiyuhao, do you know why I haven't killed you yet? Given my abilities, I just need one strike to kill you. Huiyuhao laughed coldly. I don't think it'll be so easy. You're afraid that the beast god will descend, aren't you? Long Xiaoyao laughed. I said that I have many methods of making you unable to use Di Tian's strength. Since you don't really believe me, we can give it a go right now. As he spoke, he waved his hand at Huiyuhao. A streak of black light flashed and landed in front of Huiyuhao. When Huiyuhao lowered his head to look at it, he found out that it was a pitch-black dagger that had landed by the side of his foot. Long Xiaoyao pressed his hand on Tang Wutong's shoulder, while his other hand held a dagger that was identical to the one beside Huiyuhao. You can choose between stabbing yourself or letting me stab her. You have 9 tries, and each stab has to be on your backbone. You can choose the exact position. You'll stab once for every number I count. If you hesitate, she'll take the stabs for you. After 9 stabs, both of you can leave. Huiyuhao was stunned. He didn't expect Long Xiaoyao to use such a method to threaten him. An ultimate Doluo actually used a young lady to threaten him. Long Xiaoyao laughed lightly and said, all right, let me also tell you that the poisonous darkness element in this dagger can't even be resisted by your ultimate ice. Of course, let's not even talk about her. Her body is light type. I'm afraid she'll lose half her life the moment she's stabbed. I'll give you 1 minute to consider. After that, our game will begin. Huiyuhao, don't. Tang Wutong shouted. She also realized at this moment that she had recovered her speaking ability. Huiyuhao ignored her and slowly bent his waist. He picked up the dagger from the ground. The dagger was seamless. The hilt and the blade seemed to have been carved from the same piece of metal. When held, the dagger felt icy-cold, and the darkness element in it wasn't something that Huiyuhao fancied. Dragon Emperor Doluo, will you do everything that you promised? Huiyuhao straightened his back. Even though he was very pale, blood was coming from his nose and mouth, and he looked a little dogged right now, his back was still very straight. He was like a javelin as he stood where he was. As he faced Long Xiaoyao, he didn't even bother to refer to him as an elder. In his heart, Long Xiaoyao wasn't fit at all. Long Xiaoyao smiled and replied, "Given my identity, do you think I need to scam a fellow like you?" Hui Yuhao laughed coldly, "Given your identity? You can even use a girl to threaten me. What else can you not do? It's a humiliation to my teacher that he once had the same status as you." Long Xiaoyao's expression changed slightly. "What a razor-sharp tongue you have. You have no choice. Our game is about to begin." As he spoke, he slowly lifted the arm that held the dagger. He pointed the blade of the knife at Tang Wutong. After Tang Wutong shouted, she no longer made a sound. She only watched Hui Yuhao silently. At this moment, both of them had no choice. She only wanted to see how Hui Yuhao was going to deal with such a game of death. She knew that she was now a tool in their game. No matter what she said, she wouldn't be able to affect the proceedings. Long Xiaoyao's expression changed, and he shouted, "One." Hui Yuhao moved. He didn't hesitate at all. The short blade in front of him turned into a streak of black light, and instantly stabbed into his belly. Tang Wutong couldn't help but scream. However, Hui Yuhao's expression was very calm. It was as if the dagger didn't stab into him at all. As the ice-cold dagger penetrated his flesh, he only felt a chill in his belly. It was as if a weird force was furiously sucking away his life energy. But the pain wasn't so strong. There was only a stronger and more uncomfortable numbing sensation. It was as if his tendon had been snapped. Even so, his expression didn't change. It was as if he was doing something very normal. "Oh, I forgot. I need to add another rule." Long Xiaoyao was still smiling. There was a weird look on his face right now. The dagger was still in the air. "Are you reneging on your promise?" Hui Yuhao asked coldly. "Of course not." Long Xiaoyao smiled as he said, "I only want to tell you that every stab needs to have 2 holes." Hui Yuhao's face turned cold. Tang Wutong tried to struggle. However, how could she break free from the hands of an ultimate doluo? Hui Yuhao stared at Long Xiaoyao. "Is there anything else you want to add?" Long Xiaoyao shook his head and answered, "That's all." "All right." Hui Yuhao pressed against the dagger that was in his belly. Suddenly, the dagger went deeper into his body. His facial expression also changed slightly. The sharp end of the dagger poked out from his back. However, no blood seeped out from either wound. "All right." Long Xiaoyao shouted too. "No wonder you're the disciple of Mu Yan. You're tough, but are you tough enough?" Hui Yuhao looked at him coldly as he gripped the hilt of the dagger. 2. Long Xiaoyao roared. Hui Yuhao used his right hand to pluck the dagger from his body before quickly stabbing it into the other side of his belly. When the dagger penetrated his flesh, Hui Yuhao didn't make too much noise. However, he shook tremendously when he plucked the dagger from his body. 2 streams of dark blood spurted from his earlier wounds, before his blood started to flow from his body. "Yuhao!" Tang Wutong shouted. At this moment, she had also turned pale. She only felt that things had turned blurry in front of her. However, the image of Hui Yuhao was deeply imprinted in her mind. 2 stabs. He had stabbed himself twice, without any hesitation. He didn't have the time to consider at all. 2 stabs meant that there were 4 wounds on his body right now. Long Xiaoyao laughed. "How does it feel? Light can bring life, but darkness can devour life. Isn't it great to personally feel life energy seeping out from your body? Don't worry, the darkness element in my dagger isn't very strong yet. With your abilities and spiritual power, you can handle a few more stabs if you're tough enough. Of course, she can also help you. Yu Hao, give the next stab to me. Tang Wutong suddenly shouted. Tears flowed uncontrollably from her cheeks. Hui Yu Hao smiled and muttered, Wutong, I have something to ask of you. Can I? 3. Long Xiaoyao interrupted him. Black lights flashed and blood spurted. It was the third stab, and there were 6 wounds now. No, Tang Wutong shouted. Tears flowed from her face. She only felt that she was about to suffer a mental breakdown. Her heart ached, and this heartache left her breathless. She started to shake uncontrollably. Wutong, when I first entered Shrek Academy, I was only 11 years old. Then, I was a young man filled with hatred. I knew nothing. With the guidance of eldest senior and teacher Xiao Ya, I earned the right to enter Shrek Academy. From then on, Shrek Academy became my family. At the start, life was very bitter. I cultivated every day. I knew that I was less talented than the rest. This was why I need to put in more effort than everyone else. I had a roommate then who was a clean freak, but who was very lazy too. He never cleaned the room. I was the one who cleaned the room. He was very gifted, almost one of the best in our generation. In addition, he was very handsome, and his abilities were great. When he first entered the academy, he became the center of attention. His name was Wang Dong. Hearing Hui Yu Hao's story, Tang Wutong seemed a little dazed, and there was a blurry look in her eyes. 4. No, she was immediately jolted awake from her blurred state of mind. Black lights flashed, and the 4th stab landed. There were 8 wounds now. The 3rd stab was in the middle of his belly. The 4th stab was to the left of his intestines. Hui Yu Hao's voice sounded a little weak. His shirt was already dyed black from his blood. However, he was still staring at Tang Wutong. She wasn't Wang Donga, but she looked identical to Wang Donga. Hui Yu Hao couldn't even feel pain at all. He even felt that he was blissful. Even if he died, he could still watch his favorite girl live. It seemed like it wasn't that sad after all. When Wang Dong and I first started, we had some kind of confrontation. But we became friends after we attended the academy together. I was trying to catch up to him. Suddenly, one day, we unwittingly found out that our martial souls were highly compatible. Hence, we went to the wilderness to test things out. We didn't expect our martial souls to fuse together, and we were able to unleash a fusion skill. It's just that we were still very weak then. After unleashing one fusion skill, our soul power would be drained. When we passed out from the fatigue, we would usually be late for school the next day, and we were punished together. As he spoke, Hui Yu Hao's expression turned gentler. Everything in the past replayed in his mind. After that, we were selected to compete in our first Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament, because of our impressive performance. We were reserve members. It's just that we didn't expect a few of our seniors to be hurt by evil soul masters, and they had to pull out. We replaced them as competitive squad members. It was really tough then. However, we were ambitious. We worked hard, and faced our opponents with our greatest abilities. We performed miracle after miracle, turning the impossible into reality. Finally, we defended Shrek's glory. We won the tournament for Shrek. We were then given the title of Shrek's 7 Monsters. That was one of the greatest glories of my life. 5. Black light flashed, and the dagger stabbed again. It was the other side of Hui Yu Hao's intestines. The 10th wound had been inflicted. This time, Tang Wutong didn't shout. She seemed to have been completely immersed in Hui Yu Hao's story, and forgotten what situation they were in. After that, we got together again and experienced many things together. One day, the academy held a matchmaking session for the disciples of the inner courtyard. Only those from the inner courtyard could participate, so that the male and female students could have a chance to express their liking for someone. Everyone was normally so busy with their cultivation, and they're also very shy. The sea god's blind date was our best opportunity. I also joined under peer pressure. Who knew that I would meet her during the blind date? She had long, pinkish blue hair, and was absolutely ravishing. She looked identical to Wang Dong. I still thought that she was Wang Dong's sister. However, I never expected Wang Dong to actually be Wang Donga. She had always been by my side, but I foolishly didn't know it. She called me a fool. Wasn't she right? However, I'm willing to be her fool for life. Naturally, we got together. I really liked her. Everything that happened in the past replayed in my mind. Even in my dreams, I didn't expect to get together with my goddess. Yes, she's my goddess. Wutong, you aren't the first person to look like her. There was another girl who looked exactly like her. That girl was called Wang Chioa. I met her before and after the blind date. Then, I even thought that they were the same person. It was only afterward that I realized that they were different. I liked Donga, but Chioa gradually walked into my world. She helped me and saved me. More weirdly, she was even able to form a fusion skill with me. However, I only have Donga in my heart. 6. Long Xiaoyao's voice softened a little, but he continued to shout. Hui Yuhao lifted his hand and stabbed himself. Black light flashed once again. It was the 6th stab, and there were 12 wounds now. His body shook as this stab landed. He also staggered back 2 steps. The ground was covered in black blood. His face had also turned from pale white to dim gold. His entire aura seemed to be there yet not be there at the same time. Even his pupils started to turn gray. Yuhao, stop. Please, I beg you. Please stop. Leave the last 3 stabs for me, all right? Tang Wutong was already sobbing uncontrollably. Hui Yuhao shook his head gently and said, I'm a man. Even if you don't look like her, I'll still do it for you. I'll protect my partner and my friend. We are friends, aren't we? Finish listening to my story first. I've always been very troubled. I was certain that I liked Donga, but I didn't want to harm Chioa either. Chioa started to like me from some unknown period of time. I was sandwiched between her and Donga. I didn't know what to do. As a result, all sorts of problems piled up. Once, we entered a place called the Yin-Yang Love Querying Valley. There, we went through many ordeals. Eventually, Donga saved me by committing suicide. Then, Chioa admitted defeat. However, Donga didn't manage to wake from the coma that she sustained in the process of committing suicide. I personally sent her back to her home, but that was the last time I saw her. When I returned again, she had already left. Her family told me that she had already awoken from her coma. The Doluo continent is so vast. How could I find her? Not long before that incident, Chioa had also died while saving me on a mission. I asked myself, do I really not have Chioa in my heart at all? No, I could feel that she left a deep impression in my heart. It's just that I can't split my heart into 2. I've already given it to Donga. This is why Chioa is the person I've let down the most in my life. 7. His hand lifted and the dagger stabbed. This time, the black light evidently slowed down slightly. It wasn't because Hui Yuhao's determination had fallen. It was because his body was a little overwhelmed, because he was in such a weak state. This stab was closely connected to the 6th stab. They were both further to the sides of his intestines. He finally collapsed after this stab. He sat down on the ground, in the puddle of his blood on the ground. His body was trembling slightly, and he needed his other hand to support himself, to keep himself from fully collapsing to the ground. Do you still remember? Wutong, I tried to pour my soul power into you that day. In fact, I took you as her, just without the memories. I really hoped that our martial souls would fuse to prove that you were her. But I failed. Our soul power can't fuse. It doesn't seem that our martial souls are compatible. Then, I realized that you aren't her. You are Tang Wutong. She is Wang Donga. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. At that moment, I felt very tormented. I felt extremely tormented. I really wish that you were her. If that were the case, there would be light in my world once again. Part 1 end here.